minutes past 9.
Live from the New Scientist Labs, it's Janine Young with Wammo on Kiwi.
New Scientist correspondent is Janine Young, live in Melbourne City from New Scientist Labs. Good morning, Janine.
Good morning, my friend.
Very shortly we're going to be talking about warm meat, or how climate change is affecting meat. But first up, I thought we'd cover this one about emotions, looking at human emotions.
Well, it's not so much even just our emotions, it's also the fact that they kind of equate in some respects to physical sensations, that your physical warmth can actually be associated with your psychological warmth, and it's sayings along the lines of to be given the cold shoulder or to be left out in the cold if you're being socially excluded.
Yeah.
And you think to yourself, oh, well, they're just sayings, but there's actually a degree of truth in it, because researchers are starting to look now about whether or not these physical sensations are in fact accompanying the emotions that we have. Case in point, let's just pick one. When people were taken into an experiment, they were taken to the 4th floor of a building by a researcher, and they were handed a cup of either hot or iced coffee.
Yes. Just
casually, would you mind holding this while I just take down your name? Thanks, that'd be great.
Yeah.
That's actually when the experiment began, and they found that when they were read a description of a fictitious person and then answered questions about that character, those who'd held the iced coffee rather than the hot one rated this imaginary person, they didn't exist, as less warm and friendly, even though each volunteer heard the same description.
Funny.
Yeah.
So, but they were holding the iced coffee, imagining someone else.
They had held it.
They had held it.
They had held it, and that had this sensation of either heat or cold had affected the way that they were then likely to look at another person. Another experiment, a group of people were shown either a neutral video, something nice and friendly and happy, or the toilet scene from Train Spotting. Now,
I remember that. Oh, yes, yeah, of course. Oh, goodness me, yes.
I haven't seen Train Spotting, but I have a very vivid imagination, and frankly, I don't actually want to know. That's quite enough for me.
Yeah.
Those who saw the clip made more severe judgments about unethical acts like cannibalism than volunteers who had viewed the neutral scene. And the same thing was found if you put a smell from a fart, for example, or a really filthy room, you put into that sort of situation. So it seems that disgust has this ability to change the way we look at the world and the judgments that we make on other people.
Huh. How fascinating! So basically, we're influenced by outside things all the time that we aren't even aware of on a subconscious level.
Doesn't this happen every time we talk about these sorts of things? Yeah, it's amazing. Another interesting example is that the link between physical and psychological pain. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where something really awful has happened, but I get a sensation in my chest and it physically hurts. It's one of those things that you don't know until you've actually been through it, and you think, oh, it's just, a reaction. But they've actually found now that scans, for example, people were being socially excluded through a computer game, and they thought that other people were excluding them.
Yeah.
They revealed increased activity in an area of the brain that's associated with feelings of distress that accompany physical pain. So there's actually a link between the two. And what they reckon is that over time, as the brain has needed to deal with more and more complex emotions, because humans weren't always this sophisticated and interacting with one another on the level that we do. So they reckon that it's just hijacked a whole bunch of the physical circuits that were already there that handled basic sensory perception. So, that to feel warm and happy is to feel good, and that means that you're associated with social warmth and being included and that kind of thing.
I suppose there's a reason why they call it a broken heart.
Absolutely, and the fact that you have a part of your brain that's associated with physical pain being activated at the same time kind of makes sense.
All right, now on to the story about meat getting worse the warmer the climate gets.
If you like your meat, you could be in a little bit of trouble once the climate gets a little bit warmer. Part of the quality of meat is dependent on how much heat stress animals suffer on their way to being slaughtered. And studies in the UK have shown that after an animal dies, their energy reserves in the form of glycogen are then broken down, so it becomes slightly more acidic. It goes down to about 5.5. When the meat of heat-stressed pigs, however, is acidified, it happens more quickly. And when this happens, the proteins in the muscle fall apart more quickly, and as a result, so does the meat structure. And eventually, apparently, what you're left with is something that resembles soggy white blotting paper.
Ooh.
Not quite the pork that we tend to like, and the story's no better for meat. Steak. That's likely to become a bit smellier because apparently heat-stressed cows run out of glycogen before they die.
Right.
And that darkens the meat, and apparently it almost goes black. And glycogen-free beef attracts microbes that break down protein, and that makes it smell because decay smells like decay. We've all walked past a rotting animal and know what that smells like.
Yeah, I'd hate to think about how they did this study, of course, because they obviously had to put these animals through these kinds of stresses. But,
yeah, don't, deny.
Yeah.
It's early in the morning. Let's just stick with that, shall we? But basically, it's not boding well for anybody who really likes their meat.
No, but you're a vegetarian, or?
I don't eat a lot of meat. I'm an accidental vegetarian because a lot of the meals that I like tend to be vegetarian. I eat meat, but not a lot of it.
Well, if this comes true, I suppose that could be a catalyst for more people becoming vegetarians.
It will, yes. If your meat's not going to be quite as tasty and firm as perhaps it used to be, who's going to want to eat it?
Indeed. All right, Janine, thanks so much for that.
You're welcome.
Talk to you next time. Janine Young is our New Scientist correspondent, and those stories you'll find in New Scientist magazine. It'll be coming out next week.